purpose of this story, I'll refer to myself as Nolan. This started the way most gym friendships start. You see the same guy a lot, you nod at each other. After a while, you stop pretending you don't recognize them. You just say what's up like it's no big thing. I was going to my gym almost every day after work, same time, same routine. It was the only part of my day that felt predictable. One of the regulars was a guy named Josh. He had that look like he wanted people to see him as a serious lifter, always in some kind of fitted shirt, always a shaker bottle, always walking around with that big duffel bag. He was there so often it felt like he lived there. At first it was just small stuff, like a head nod when we passed the dumbbells. Pretty normal. You see the same faces long enough and it starts to feel rude not to acknowledge them. Josh seemed friendly enough. He would smile and do that quick chin-up thing like we were already friends even though we really weren't. One day I was about to do bench, and he was already on the bench in the next rack over. He looked over and asked if I could spot him. That's when it actually became something. I said sure. I stood behind the bench while he unracked the bar. He was strong, I'll give him that. He did a few reps, and he struggled on the last one, so I helped guide it back. He sat up, and then he started talking like he had been waiting for this moment. He asked me how long I'd been lifting, what my split was, some basic gym talk. I told him, and he told me his. He talked fast, and I could tell he was high energy. He asked where I was from, what I do for work, and if I lived close. I kept it basic. I didn't give him my address or anything, just the general area. He said he lived not far from me, and he laughed like that was proof we were meant to be friends. Before I went back to my set, he asked if I had Instagram. He held out his phone pretty casually, so I just followed him back. It didn't seem like a big deal. People exchange socials all the time now. It's like the modern version of swapping numbers. For the next couple of weeks, it was the same routine but slightly different. If Josh was there, he would come over and say what's up. He'd ask what I was training. He'd comment on something I did like he was coaching me, even though I didn't ask. It wasn't offensive, just a little much. I figured he was just one of those guys who treated the gym like a community center. He would DM me gym memes sometimes. Dumb stuff, videos of guys failing lifts, or edits of bodybuilders with dramatic music. I'd just react with a laughing emoji and keep it moving. I didn't want to be rude. He seemed like he just wanted a gym friend. Then he messaged me one day saying there was a local festival happening that weekend and we should go. I didn't even know about it. I looked it up, and it was one of those town festivals with food trucks, cheap drinks, random vendors, live music, and a crowd that's half families and half people just there to get buzzed in the middle of the day. I hesitated, but I said sure. It sounded like something to do. I figured it would be a quick hangout. If it was awkward, I could leave early. When the day came, I met him there in the afternoon. The first thing I noticed was how different he seemed outside the gym. At the gym, he had that controlled energy. Outside, it was like he had no volume knob. He was loud from the moment I saw him. He came up grinning too hard, slapped me on the shoulder, and started talking like we were reuniting after years apart. Then he started doing these weird voices, like cartoon voices. High-pitched, nasally, and then suddenly deep and scratchy. He'd say normal sentences, but in a voice like he was doing an impression. It didn't fit the situation. It wasn't like we were telling jokes and he was doing characters. He just kept switching voices for no reason, like he couldn't help himself. At first, I laughed because it caught me off guard. It was so random that it was kind of funny, but then it kept going. We got drinks and walked around, and it was like the alcohol flipped something on in him. His jokes got more inappropriate. Not in a clever way, more in a shock value way. He'd point at random people and make comments that you should not say out loud, especially not around families. He kept trying to make me laugh by saying stuff that would get him punched if the wrong person heard it. I found myself doing that tight smile thing, laughing a little bit but also looking around to see if anyone heard. He didn't seem to care at all. He would look right at people while saying things, like he wanted them to react. A couple times I told him to chill, like calm down, and he would laugh and do another voice, like a creepy whisper, saying my name like it was part of the joke. Nolan, in this fake, spooky tone. He did it more than once. It was weird how much he liked saying my name. Still, the festival was busy and loud, and I could tell myself it was just him being socially awkward and trying too hard. Some people have no filter once they start drinking. I didn't want to judge him too harshly off one day. We ended up staying a couple hours. I went home thinking he was strange, but probably harmless. After that, he kept messaging me more. He started sending DMs that were less like memes and more like constant check-ins, asking what I was doing, asking if I was going to the gym later, asking if I wanted to link up again. At first I answered, but then I slowed down. I'm not the type of person who wants to be texting all day with a guy I barely know. He asked me to go out to a bar one weekend and said he invited 2 girls to meet us. That made it feel more normal. Like, okay, we're just going out, there'll be other people, it won't be just the 2 of us. So I agreed. We met at the bar at night. Josh showed up already buzzed, I could tell right away. He had that half-there look in his eyes and the extra confidence. We ordered drinks and about 10 minutes passed, then 20, and no one else showed up. I asked about the girls, and he said they bailed. He said it like it was nothing, like it happened all the time. Meanwhile, he hyped this up almost like it was a double date. I felt like he lied the entire time about the girls just to get me there. That thought landed in my stomach and stayed there. Then the voices started again, even worse this time. He wasn't just doing cartoon voices. He was doing these creepy, exaggerated sounds like fake laughing, fake crying, then switching into a deep voice like a movie villain. He would incorporate these sounds and voices into the conversation we were having, but it was still so weird. He kept doing it right at the table while people around us were trying to have normal conversations. I saw a couple at the bar look over and smirk, not because it was funny, but because it was awkward, like they were watching someone make a fool of themselves. Josh seemed to notice and leaned into it. He got louder. He started telling jokes that didn't even make sense, then laughing at himself too hard. Every time I tried to bring the conversation back to normal, he'd interrupt with another voice, and then he started saying my name again. Nolan. Listen, Nolan. It was like he couldn't talk without anchoring me to him. I felt embarrassed sitting there, not because I cared what the strangers thought, although I did feel like he made me look like a weirdo by association, but because his energy was so off that it made me feel trapped. People were watching, and the bartender looked annoyed, like she thought he was overly drunk and considering kicking him out. Josh kept drinking. He ordered shots and tried to get me to do them. I said no, and he acted like I was betraying him. He made a joke about me being boring. Then he did a voice like a crying baby. I forced a laugh, but inside I wanted to get out of there so bad. I looked at my phone and made the decision I was leaving. I told him I had to go help my brother with something. It was the first excuse that came to mind. Josh stared at me for a second like he didn't believe it. His face changed and he looked genuinely annoyed, like I had just ruined his night. He asked why I couldn't just stay. I repeated that I had to go. He said something under his breath, then did that fake laugh again, but it sounded angry this time. I stood up, said I'd see him at the gym, and left. He didn't even say bye. People looked at me as I left, and I knew it was because we were a spectacle in there because of him. On the drive home, I felt relief. It was like I had been holding my breath for an hour. I told myself that was it. I wasn't hanging out with him again. Gym acquaintances is one thing. This was something else. The next time I went to the gym, I saw him. I tried to avoid eye contact. I stayed on the other side of the gym, hoping he wouldn't notice. Of course he did. He came up behind me while I was re-racking dumbbells and said what's up like nothing happened. He was overly friendly again, like the bar night didn't exist. He asked why I left so early. I shrugged and said I had to help my brother. He asked if my brother was good, and I said yeah. Then he started talking about going out again, like he was already setting up the next time. I kept my answers short. I told him I had a lot going on. He didn't take the hint. He stayed right there talking while I tried to move through my workout. He followed me from one station to another like he was glued to me. Every time I tried to end the conversation, he'd start a new one. It felt like he had decided I was his person now and he wasn't letting go. After that, I started changing my gym time. I'd go earlier or later just to avoid him. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. And when I didn't see him, I felt better. But then I'd get messages, more than before. If I didn't open them, he'd send another. If I left him on scene, he'd send messages like, "You good?" I started not opening my Instagram DMs at all. I hated the feeling of seeing his name pop up. It was like a knot in my stomach every time. I thought that if I ignored him long enough, he'd get bored and move on. One night I was in my room lying in bed, trying to fall asleep. It was a hot summer night and my window was cracked. My room is on the first floor, facing the backyard. I heard something outside. It was a low and drawn-out voice, like someone trying to sound spooky on purpose. It said my name. It wasn't loud, but it was right outside, close enough that it felt like it was under my window. Then after that, it was just the sound of the wind, making the abrupt stop even more unsettling. I sat up in bed, listening hard, but I heard nothing else. I got up and went to the window and looked through the blinds. Though I couldn't see anyone, I felt someone's presence out there. I can't explain it. I whispered through the window, asking if it was Josh. I didn't mean to say his name out loud, but it slipped out because that was who it sounded like. When there was no answer, I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. My first thought was, how would he even know where I lived? I hadn't told him my address nor posted it. I went to Instagram and messaged him. I asked if he was outside my house. I stared at the screen after I sent it, feeling stupid, but I needed to know. The messages showed seen a few minutes later. That made it worse. He saw it and didn't answer right away. I watched those little seconds pass like they were hours. Then he replied with one word. No. That was it. Incredibly fishy why he wouldn't respond something more, at the very least questioning why I asked that. I didn't respond. I put my phone down and tried to forget it. The next day, he messaged me again asking why I was being cold and distant. I didn't answer. I didn't want a conversation. I didn't want to give him anything to latch onto. But that night, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't outside my window. It was in my backyard, farther back, like someone standing near the fence line. It was the same intentionally creepy voice in the same fake tone, like it was meant to scare me. It sounded like Josh doing one of his voices. He said my name again, slow and stretched out. Then it stopped abruptly, as if he noticed movement inside. I got up and walked to the window fast and pulled the blinds aside and stared out. The backyard looked empty. I closed the blinds and locked the door. Even though it was hot, I shut it completely. I turned my fan up to full blast so I wouldn't hear anything else. Then I picked up my phone and messaged Josh again. This time I didn't ask. I told him if he didn't leave and if he ever came back, I would contact the police and get a restraining order. I left it off with calling him a freak. I blocked him right after sending it. I set my phone down and told myself that was the end. I had drawn a line. He would get scared off. That's what normal people do when they get threatened with police. But Josh wasn't normal, clearly. I lay there staring at the ceiling, and I couldn't sleep. Even with the fan on full blast, my ears were still searching for sounds outside. A part of me felt this awful curiosity, like if I didn't check the window, I'd be blindsided. I rolled over and carefully lifted the blinds just a little. Through the small gaps, I saw a figure close to the window. A shadow outline standing still. It was so close that it blocked some of the faint light from outside. I yelled loud right at the window, telling him to get out and never come back. The figure/shadow shifted away from the window and disappeared into the dark. I stood there now shaking, listening for the sound of the gate closing or something, but there was just silence now. After that, I didn't feel safe in my own room anymore. Every sound outside made me think he was back. I stopped going to that gym completely. I didn't want him seeing my routine. I signed up at a different gym across town, even though it was more expensive and further away. I stopped posting on Instagram for a while. I kept my blinds closed at night, and I started checking locks obsessively. 3 weeks passed and nothing happened, so I started to relax a little. Then one morning, I walked out to my car and saw my rear tire was flat. I crouched down and saw the cut. It was a clean slice in the sidewall. He slashed my tire. I looked up and down the street like I expected him to be standing there watching me. I didn't confront Josh. He was blocked anyway. I knew confronting him would only feed whatever this was. If he did slash my tire, it meant he was watching me. It meant he wanted a reaction. I didn't want to give him one. I got the tire replaced, and that same day I bought cameras. I installed Ring cameras around the house, front and back. I put motion lights in the backyard. I didn't like spending the money, but I liked the idea of being blind even less. I kept a low profile after that. I stopped going out late, I didn't take the same route home every day, and I'd check the Ring app every time I get a motion notification. The worst part about all this was knowing a guy I met in the most normal place A guy I just tried to be friendly to developed this disturbing obsession with me after hanging out twice. And once someone like that decides you're their friend or you hold any sort of relationship with them, good luck getting them out of your life. So my advice is to be careful who you let into your life at all.
He promised to make America healthier. Instead, RFK Jr. gutted the FDA, undermining food and medicines.
I'm Lewis. I'm 22 years old, and I live in a small town in Kansas. It's a safe town. I've lived here for almost 14 years. I work at a Mexican restaurant, and I've been doing that for 4 years. It's not a bad job. I go to the gym every day with my friend Colton. He's 19. He's your typical redneck kind of guy, but he's chill and a good friend. This happened last summer. Colton had been dating a cheerleader from high school named Addie. She was 17. They met on a dating app and dated for about 4 months. Their relationship was toxic, to say the least. They fought over small things constantly. She didn't even like him going to the gym with me. She wanted him with her all the time. Eventually, Colton found out she had cheated on him with multiple guys. That was the final straw. He broke up with her. She didn't take it well. One Tuesday night, Colton and I were at the gym like usual. We normally go around 7 p.m. because he gets off work at 6. We were drinking our pre-workout and starting our session when the gym door opened and a girl walked in. She was wearing a red hoodie and blue leggings. Right away, something was off. She just stood there for a second staring at us instead of looking around the gym, moving, or looking at her phone. Then she walked towards the women's locker room, but kept looking back at us as she walked. Colton didn't really think much of it, but I did. A few minutes later, we heard noises coming from the women's locker room. It sounded like crying mixed with whispering. It was loud enough that we could hear it through our headphones. It wasn't normal crying. It sounded unstable, like someone talking to themselves while breaking down. We tried to ignore it and kept working out. About 10 minutes later, she came out of the locker room wearing the exact same clothes. That's when it got stranger, because if you go into the locker room, you're usually changing to work out. But she didn't. She just walked out and started moving around the gym without actually using any equipment. She kept drifting closer to us, like too close, hovering near whatever machine we were on, watching us, not even really working out. I told Colton I was getting uncomfortable. We moved to another machine. A few minutes later, she was gone. But we didn't see her leave. We just realized she wasn't there anymore. We finished our workout around 8:40 p.m. and went outside to talk for a bit. I noticed a car sitting in the parking lot with its lights on. That felt weird because only 4 other people were there, and they had come together in one truck. But we brushed it off. About 10 minutes after I got home, Colton texted me asking if I remembered that girl from the gym. I said yeah. He asked what if it was Addie. That idea made my stomach drop. He said she had been acting crazy since the breakup and really wanted him back. I told him there was no way. It was probably just some random girl. Eventually, we both convinced ourselves it wasn't her and went to bed. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard knocking on my brother's window. I went to look outside, but didn't see anyone. A few minutes later, there was knocking on my window. Again, no one was there. Then I heard aggressive knocking at the front door. The doorknob started shaking violently. Not someone checking if it was unlocked, someone trying to get in. Then I heard a girl laughing. Not normal, playful laughter, it was hysterical. Every few seconds, she would start laughing again like she was enjoying herself. I started feeling sick. Then my phone buzzed. A random number texted me saying to leave Colton alone. It said I convinced him to break up with her, and that now I would pay the consequences. I knew immediately it was Addie. Another text came in. It was a picture of a knife in her hand. That's when it became real. She wasn't just angry. She was outside my house with a weapon. I texted my dad, who was thankfully still awake. He called the police immediately. The laughter stopped after a few minutes, but I was too scared to move and check. When the cops arrived, They found her sitting in the grass near the house like she had been waiting. They arrested her on the spot. She admitted everything to the officers. They asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes. I called Colton and told him what happened. He was just glad I was okay. The only thing I still don't understand is how she got my address. I never gave it to her. Colton swears he didn't either. That part still bothers me, because if she found it once, she could have found it any time. I'm just glad the police got there when they did. I'm 25, and I had been going to the same LA Fitness in my town for a few years. I usually went after work around 6 in the evening. After a while, you start recognizing the regulars, even if you never talk to them. About 6 months ago, I started noticing a guy I hadn't seen before. The first time I really noticed him was during one of my leg days. I was doing squats, and when I finished a set, I looked up at the mirror in front of me and saw him sitting on a chest press machine behind me. He wasn't using it. He was just sitting there leaning forward with his elbows on his knees looking straight ahead. But when I started another set and looked up again, he was still sitting in the same position, now staring in my direction. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. The next time I saw him was a couple days later. I was doing shoulder presses and noticed him sitting on a lat pull-down machine across the room. Again, he wasn't using it. The weight stack wasn't moving, and he had been sitting there the entire time I was working out. Every time I glanced over, I caught him looking at me before he turned his head away. After that, I started noticing him almost every time I went to the gym. The weirdest part was that I never actually saw him work out. He would just sit on machines or benches but never move the weights. One night, I was doing squats again when I noticed him behind me holding his phone up in front of his chest. It was angled directly toward me. For a second, it looked like he was recording. The moment I turned around and stared at him, he lowered the phone and looked away. That was when I started feeling genuinely uncomfortable. Over the next week, I kept seeing him. Sometimes he'd be sitting near the dumbbells, sometimes on a machine across the room, but no matter where I was in the gym, he always seemed to have a clear view of me. One night, I went to refill my water bottle, and when I turned the corner toward the fountain, he was suddenly standing there only a few feet away. It startled me because I had never seen him that close before. He looked down the moment he realized I noticed him, and he quietly walked past me without saying anything. After that, I decided to change my routine. Instead of going around 6 like I usually did, I started going around 9 at night. The gym is a lot quieter then, and I figured if he had a normal schedule, he probably wouldn't be there. The first night I tried it, I walked in and scanned the room right away. He wasn't there. The same thing happened the next few nights. I thought maybe I had solved the problem. Then one weekend, my friends and I went out to a bar downtown. It was crowded and loud like most places on a Saturday night. And there he was. I turned around while we were standing near the back of the room and saw the guy sitting alone at a small table near the wall. It took me a second to realize it was the same guy from the gym. He was wearing a dark jacket and a baseball hat pulled low over his face. When I noticed him, he was staring directly at me. The second he realized I had seen him, he looked down at his drink. Over the next 20 minutes, I caught him looking at me several more times. Each time he'd quickly look away. Eventually, I leaned toward my friends and said I wanted to go somewhere else. We left and walked a few blocks to another bar. I didn't see him again that night, but the whole thing stayed in my mind. The scariest moment happened 2 weeks later. There's a nature preserve near my house with a long trail I sometimes run during the day. It was a cloudy afternoon when I started my run on the dirt path that leads deeper into the preserve. About 10 minutes in, I noticed someone jogging behind me. At first, it didn't seem unusual, but after a minute, I realized the distance between us wasn't changing at all. He stayed the exact same distance behind me the entire time. I slightly increased my pace, and within seconds, I heard his footsteps speed up too. I sped up again, and he did the same thing. When I glanced back briefly, I saw a man wearing a hat with his head down jogging behind me. His build looked exactly like the guy from the gym. That's when the adrenaline kicked in. I knew there was a small dirt exit path up to a nearby street if you took a sharp left ahead. I started running faster and faster until I was almost sprinting. His footsteps got louder behind me. When I turned onto the narrow dirt path leading up to the street, I heard him break into a full sprint too. I ran as fast as I possibly could. When I reached the street, I started screaming for help. A man who had been standing in his driveway across the road immediately looked over. The second the guy behind me saw someone else, he stopped at the edge of the trail. I turned and saw him hesitate for a moment before turning around and running back into the woods. The man from the driveway came over to check on me while I tried to catch my breath. By the time I looked back toward the trail, the guy was completely gone. I never saw him at the gym again after that day. A few weeks later, I canceled my membership and joined a gym across town. This experience definitely made me a whole lot more paranoid in public settings, as far as paying attention to who's watching me.